Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for coming. I'm really excited. There's like a full room here. It's a little nerve-wracking, but this is the panel on public fursuiting. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panelists. So I'm Lelia. I sued as Leila the Spaniel and Rusty. And I've been doing public suiting for 2.5 years now, and I'm just really passionate about it. I've done over 20 different events and outings in public, and it's just something I want to share with people and get other people involved in. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Oh, sure. Oh, she is right. That is intimidating. Everyone, my name is Tim Dane. A lot of you may know me as Pesto Racoon. I'm actually the founder of the Agents of Mirth, which is on the backside here. We are actually a non-profit designed to have cosplayers become available to assist charities and do public fursuiting. We're a little bit different on the grounds that we actually are a fully incorporated, background checked, and insured organization. Over the past few years, we've had our own adventures and misadventures in public suiting, and Leila is also one of our members, and so we're here to help explain how things are done a little bit. And this...
Hi, my name is Mac. My character is Bogoat. I've been suiting with the Agents of Mirth. I'm currently the acting secretary and creative director. I've been suiting with them for a year and a half about, and honestly, just being able to bring smiles to people's faces with my suit and just by performing in front of people in public has completely changed my life.
All right, so the first question I want to ask is, who here has experienced public suiting in the past? Awesome. Looks like a lot of you.
Who here has had misadventures? I didn't even say that loud and it carried.
I got attacked in fursuit once.
Oh no, that's not good. So who here is interested in getting involved in public suiting but has not had the chance yet or not sure where to start? Well, good. So hopefully this panel is going to give you guys the confidence to go out there and give it a shot. One of the questions I'd like to ask you all is, why do we fursuit in public? What is the draw there? Anyone have any ideas or?
I just do it because of something different.
Yeah, that's good.
Makes people smile.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Fun. Yes, exactly.
I was thinking it's a way to promote furries and also give back.
Very, very good. I like that one a lot. Great Wolf?
Yeah, it allows me to interact with people in a way that I wouldn't be able to as a human.
Yes.
It allows me to just walk up to people and be like, love me! But it also allows shyer children to express themselves.
Yes, for sure. In the light blue shirt?
Me?
Yes.
It allows me to escape the troubles of my world and just act like a little husky pup and just get like free hugs from like 3-year-olds and stuff like that.
Yes, that's so good.
It brings joy to people's faces.
Yes. And way in the back there.
Yeah, so I actually fursuit in public, like specifically Mardi Gras, because it protects my head from the bees that can throw.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I like that. Very smart.
New Orleans is a fun place to public fursuit.
So yeah, these are some really, really great reasons. And a lot of the reasons I also do it, just bringing joy to people, bringing, a, good side of the furry community to the public. So, they, Tiger?
Yeah, I love representing the animals that
Yeah. And just sharing your love of, costume performance or a certain animal or character, even connecting with people, like I have dogs and people will see, oh, you look just like my dog or something like that, and it always gets them excited. So I'm going to cover some of the differences between suiting in public versus suiting in a convention space. So it is pretty different, suiting in public compared to a convention. Conventions are kind of a more controlled environment, so you know they expect fursuiters and costume performers. Whereas in public, you're never exactly sure what how people are going to react. A lot of times it's going to be really good. Sometimes people might be frightened or unsure of you. So it's a little bit of a wild card there. At conventions, people know how to interact with you for the most part. Whereas out in public, people might not know what to do or how to interact with you. And there's just an element of surprise in public fursuiting, which can be really exciting and fun, but also a little bit nerve-wracking if you've never done it before. Do you guys have any input on that or experiences?
Our group almost exclusively does things outside of con spaces and comic book stores. Actually, it's one of our greatest challenges in recruiting new members is because so many other cosplayers as well as furries aren't comfortable with actually stepping through that door to an uncontrolled environment. One of the things that we stress is having handlers. All our handlers when we're in public wear our handler shirts. It identifies us to the public as a whole as a group that's out interacting, as well as the law enforcement. And it also allows a handler to be there to be able to ward off and let people know what the dangers that is going on. Very often the relationship between a suitor and a handler is one in very low tones, but you'll be with a suitor, you'll be going, you have a little girl at 3 o'clock. They can't see the little girl, but they know at that point to go. But the interaction with the public can be fraught with a lot of dangers, everything from the terrain, weather, overheating, which I know Layla's going to be covering, in addition to just the basics of moving around and having the public not respond encouraging, I guess is probably the best term for it. Anything else do you want me to cover while I was up here? Well, we're right here, so I think I know the big thing to cover. One of the big things to cover is know the laws of your land.
Yes.
A few years ago, I held a panel at Megaplex. Anyone been to Megaplex? About a third. We held a panel on public suiting at Megaplex, and it was actually about 3 weeks before we had scheduled a flash mob at a local park in Brevard County, Florida. We had it planned, and 2 hours before it was supposed to set place, my phone blows up. There's a fur in the park being arrested. This young man traveled from Tampa, entered the park in his own unique species suit, by himself, with a tactical vest, an airsoft pistol, and an airsoft rifle. The public seemed to be a little concerned, and the Cocoa Police Department responded to what they believed was an active shooter. They took him into custody, and he was Florida man for 2 weeks internationally on the AP news feed, as well as our organization's name and everything else. Luckily, they got the story a little backwards and put it that he was there on a flash mob that had been canceled, not that he was the cause of it being canceled. As a result, he was arrested for disturbing the peace, which was a misdemeanor, with a felony tag-on charge of wearing a mask or hood during the commission of a misdemeanor. He was in jail for a week before a letter to the state's attorney explained what fursuiting was, what cosplay was, how this young man from so far away found himself dressed so oddly in Brevard County. Also, when I come up here for a week in Atlanta, I visit my mother in Rome, Georgia, about an hour north by northwest. Now, just recently on one of the trips, I said, her group's having a craft fair in downtown on the street. I think it would be hilarious to suit up as Pesto and pop in on them. But the little voice, every time you hear that little voice and you're in suit that goes, maybe this isn't a good idea. two things are guaranteed. Most likely it is a bad idea, and it will probably end up in a great story if you actually do it. I do recommend listening to the first voice. I actually contacted the local law enforcement for Rome, and it actually is a city ordinance that wearing any mask or hood to obscure your identification in the city limits publicly is illegal. So I didn't surprise her in suit. So that is one of the biggest things. Let the authorities and know your laws and let the authorities know. The same park today that the young man went into, the leisure activities manager has a framed picture of the Agents of Mirth on her desk. We actually held our second annual spring cosplay meetup where we actually had our own police detail assigned to us. We had over a dozen suitors and over a dozen other cosplayers join us. The kids that came to the park that day had no clue what they were walking into. But it was definitely a great photo opportunity.
Yeah, that was actually really fun.
With that note, give it back to Leah.
All right. So yeah, we kind of covered a little bit, but choosing a venue is really important. You know, a lot of public parks, outdoor festivals are generally, you know, going to be okay. But again, always check with, you know, your local city authorities. Make sure there are, not any no mask policies in place. And if you do happen to get approached by anyone, you know, don't give them any trouble. Always, you know, just explain exactly what you're doing. If you need to remove your head, you know, just do it. I recently went to a little art festival, and I brought Rusty just to kind of, you know, try him out and see how it went. And right after I'd suited up, a security officer approached me, and I was like, uh-oh. And he was just like, well, what's this all about? And I spent some time explaining to him, you know, I just, you know, like to bring smiles and, you know, do this for fun. And we talked for a while, and he, at the end of it, he was like, you know what, that is so cool. And I've never spoken to a talking dog before. This is very neat. So that was a pretty fun experience. So any place that's private property, malls, stores, anything like that, you definitely want to tend to avoid those unless you have express permission from the facility. So next I'll cover, you know, if you want to actually start doing, you know, fundraisers and charity events. These are going to be things that typically you'll want to reach out to the event coordinators ahead of time, you know. Let them know what you're doing, you know, trying to search for different local events in your area. One of the best places I've found to search for local events is Facebook, actually. They have, you know, an events section, you can check there. Think about what kind of events you would like to attend, what kind of events would be fitting. Does anyone have any suggestions for what events would be good choices for fursuiters in general?
Yeah, picnic or some sort of outdoor
Yeah.
food activity.
I wore mine to a car meet.
A car meet, that's interesting.
Maybe like a local farmers market.
That would be fun, yeah. Again, you know, checking for permission, but yeah, farmers markets are great. In the blue shirt.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So there's an outdoor mall near me,
Uh-huh.
and I went in my fursuit there, and the people didn't seem to mind me.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know if it's that they didn't see me or not, or if they didn't mind. But I know I should still ask, but they didn't seem to mind me. And I went into one of the stores, and the workers didn't seem to mind me.
Uh-huh.
Would that mean that I was okay? And I also get really nervous around police officers. Oh my God, did I do something wrong?
Right. I'm the same way. You know, when in doubt, it's always best to ask for permission.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times, you know, most people are going to be okay with it.
Yeah.
But it never hurts to ask ahead of time just so you don't get into that situation.
I have another question. How do you say no to hugs or pictures or anything if you're
That's a good question. We're actually going to cover that some in the safety section. So I will definitely keep that in mind and get to that in the red shirt.
In my experience, my fursona is a dog, So therefore, a lot of times I will volunteer and work with the dog shelter in my city, and it's a great opportunity because it draws a lot of attention to adoption.
Exactly, yeah, that's a really good one. You know, animal events are obviously a good fit. Children events, work-ins.
We did the Humane Society one.
Yeah.
That one we had to get permission from the Sam's Club to buy the food, and then we got permission from the Humane Society when we delivered it.
Uh-huh.
So that was a big success. That one went over real well.
Yeah.
But we did make sure to get our permission first.
And the striped shirt?
Our railroad does a monthly ride trip for autistic and disabled kids.
Uh-huh.
And we have a few fursuiters come on and it just lights up their faces.
Oh, yeah.
We always look for new fursuiters to show up because they freaking love them. So.
That's awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities out there. So, you know, and think about things you're passionate about too. I mean, I'm passionate about dogs, so I do a lot of dog events. And obviously my characters are dogs as well, so it's kind of a perfect fit. So, you know, just thinking about those kinds of things. I know you guys work with a lot of events. Do you have anything to add to that? Or? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Over here. I was just saying that Sarasota has like a touristy area, and we just are known for having festivals like every weekend.
Yes.
So they're kind of used to me now. And so it's kind of fun always, like, authorities already know and everything. So I kind of have, like, people who are very confident as handlers, not people who are, you know, just a little shy. You have to be very vocal and dramatic about it.
Yeah, tourist areas can be a really good fit, too.
And all the old ladies are just, they're all over you. It's so
fun.
They love it.
Yes?
Charity auctions.
Yes, charity auctions. That's a good one, too.
Renaissance Festivals is a good one, but I'll tell you something, if you want to go fursuiting at a Comic-Con, be prepared to be mobbed. I mean, I'm talking every 10 feet, 15 people are going to want a picture of you, so just be prepared. I gotta go eat.
Yeah, well, I was also gonna say, like, on the other hand, I've been to a few anime conventions before where, you know, and I mean, admittedly, some of the people there are young and they don't really know what they're doing and they're excitable, but I have been tackle hugged on a few times where somebody runs up behind you and just, like, tackles you as hard as they can, and that's not okay
Yeah,
for them
that's
to
not
do.
fun at all.
You were about to ask if you had any input on places.
Right, or, you know, events, or, nope.
Not really.
Okay. So I'm going to cover a little bit about how to contact some of these events, because I know that can be a scary step. It was for me. I found usually contacting through email is the easiest, so just find the email of the event coordinator for the event. And, you know, just send them an email that, you know, kind of explains what you do, how you can benefit the event. It's really helpful to have some good quality photos of your costume. A website or a Facebook page that you can direct them to, just so they can see what you're all about. And just, you know, make sure to keep those emails, you know, courteous and professional. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, be prepared because a lot of times you won't hear back at all. Be prepared for rejection as well. There's a lot of reasons that a event might choose to say, no, we're not actually interested in having you. So don't let that discourage you. One example I have is when I first started shooting, there's a very big dog event down in Orlando called Paws in the Park. And I really wanted to go and perform there, and I contacted them, and they said, we love your suit, we love the concept. Unfortunately, we are sponsored by Disney, and we have Disney characters that come out there. And if anyone is familiar with Disney's policies, they are very, very strict about any other mascots or costume characters being in the vicinity. So it might not even be a reason that you're expecting there. Eventually, actually, I have done fundraising each year for Paws in the Park, and this past year they were like, yeah, absolutely, you can come. So it might end up turning out good in the end as well. So once you contact the event and they've said, yes, it's important to work out all the details with them. What time they want you to be there. It's really important to ask about a changing area. I've had a lot of experiences with that, because a lot of times they don't know what you need. The very first event I went to, I didn't think to ask for a changing area. I was like, oh, they should know, mascot, they probably had mascots before. So I get there and I ask them where I could change, and they point to the porta potty. I about passed out. So, trying to find a place to change right before the event was a little bit insane there. I know the agents have a really awesome solution to that, but so you guys actually have a bus that you use, which is pretty cool. So sometimes you have to get creative, and if you're able to take that step, then...
A little overkill, but...
It is great, though.
We were just lucky.
Yeah.
But we're almost holding a private conversation on this aspect. The Agents actually has a retired short bus, which I get the pride of saying I'm the proud owner of a short bus. It does have its own air conditioning. It actually handles 4 or 5 suitors at a time to be able to change and cool down. Anytime you push past that limit, you start losing the actual cooling ability, but it does give us a more modern benefit when we show up to outdoor events of having a place to change. And through it, we've actually gained associations with other cosplay organizations. The local Mandalorian Mercs know that they have hospitality with us, so they know they have air conditioning and water available if they see that bus available. But it is important to have an idea of where you're going to change, whether they provide it or not. Once again, the hazards of public exposure is probably a good word for it. When you're changing in your car, might not be overlooked by law enforcement. I always recommend if at the very least, if you're going to be changing your car in public, put your undergear on before you show up at the event.
Oh, yeah, that's...
At the least, you're just a bicyclist without a bike, putting on a weird pair of overjays.
Yeah, so as far as changing spaces goes, a lot of events aren't going to be able to provide you with something perfect, so you may have to improvise. A lot of times, my husband and I, he's my handler, will go and bring his SUV and just kind of find a quiet area in the parking lot, and then I can put my costume on there and take breaks. Some more unique places I've used is back of a U-Haul, which actually works out really well. The event in particular had a U-Haul they were using for storage, and they're like, yeah, you can use our U-Haul. I'm like, different, but...
A good one to actually have is you can buy portable toilet tents for camping.
Oh yeah.
And they're essentially just
like a pop-up tent,
shelter.
kind of.
And they're only big enough for one person at a time, but they're instant up, and they fold down fairly small, so they can be carried by one person.
That's actually a really good idea.
They have a closing door and everything, so they're actually really handy if you are in a place where you don't have access to any kind of building or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yes?
Could you use like a tree if you had a window over?
You could. The thing with, a tree is that, it's not going to cover all angles. And, when I've been out in public before, there have been occasions where I just had to kind of pop behind the first, little area as far away from the event as I could. So sometimes you do have to kind of wing it that way. So now that you have, an event that you're planning on going to, let's talk about preparing for that event. So this first part's pretty obvious, but obviously make sure that your suit is clean and presentable. So brush your suits. You want to, make a good impression for the public, because you do have to consider the fact that when you're going out in public in a fursuit, you're not only representing yourself, but you are representing the whole fandom. when you're doing that. So definitely making a good impression is really important there. So once you get to the event, I definitely recommend scouting it out of suit first. Just kind of checking it out, checking the area, looking for areas that you can take a break if you don't have that option. Scouting out potential pitfalls, exits, and just kind of planning your walk there. And I'm going to cover this a little bit more in the safety section, but always, always, always have a handler. Always. It is so important. Never ever go out in public without a handler. It's not safe. Handlers are so important for you. And like I said,
so yes. I don't want to interrupt again, but
oh, you're fine.
We actually, where I'm from in Brisbane, we have a weekly meet. And depending on the week, we generally have 10 to 15 suitors. And we generally, we don't really keep it as an official rule, but we generally try to have at least one handler per 3 suitors.
That's pretty good.
Because we do travel as a group rather than individual. So, you don't have to have a one-to-one kind of handler situation.
Yeah. I know you guys were suiting in bigger groups. Do you have a general rule of thumb with handlers to suitors?
I personally like to have a handler specifically to myself, but we don't have a lot of people left in our group now that aren't in suit.
That's true.
So we usually have to deal with 3 handlers for 12 of us, which is about a handler every 4 suitors. So I'd say as a rule of thumb, for every 5 suitors, have at least 1 handler. 2 is preferred though.
Yeah, I think 5 would probably be the maximum. 3 to 4 is probably better. But if you have really experienced handlers, you be able to deal with that.
You can ask it over there.
Oh, yes.
Another thing you can do if you have a large group, because usually what you'll find is you'll have like a huge group that wants to suit or have cosplay outfits to wear. So anyone, you can always like break it up. You can say, okay, we're gonna do shifts. So
yes.
You can have 5 go the first time. The 5 that aren't suiting will be your handler.
Yep.
And then we'll change them out. Then we'll have 5 that was suiting now are going to be handlers. The 5 that were handlers will now be suitors.
Yeah,
that way you kind of have a good mix.
Yeah, that's a really great way to handle when you have large groups. Yes.
Is it okay to be your own handler? Because I have some experience inside and outside of suit. So for me, I have that type of peripheral that, okay, there's a thing there, there's children over here, I can hear them. Is it okay to be your own handler or still have somebody outside of suit?
It's much safer to have someone outside of suit. I have experience handling and suiting, and I gotta say, in suit, I can handle myself pretty well, but I like to have that safety net of I don't want to not hear a kid or something and accidentally plow him over, or swing an arm back and hit a kid in the face or something, or step in a hole. So I definitely say you can do it yourself, but I don't recommend it.
I would highly recommend not, just because you're very vulnerable in suits, and that handler is there to watch out for you and keep you safe. There's a lot.
Can I add on to that?
Yes.
It's like also like you gotta think about the public who's asking questions.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. The handler is
And
basically.
talk to you the whole time through, all these questions like, what are you doing and everything, and talking around kids. That's happened to us a couple times where they want to talk to the suitor and ask questions, and you're like, I don't want to talk in suit, so
Right.
the handler has to be the person to step in.
Yeah, the handler is basically your voice when you're in suits.
What should you do if there's a dangerous situation and you can't handle it, or you see the kid? So what do you handle it?
If there's a dangerous, if you really feel like you're in danger, I would honestly take my head off and get out of that situation as fast as possible. It's, if you feel like you're in a dangerous situation, at that point, breaking the magic is a moot point. Oh, sorry. Tie cat?
Yeah,
That's pretty smart.
But, okay, so personally, one of the first places that I went public suiting was actually Mardi Gras, and I had my parents be my handlers. but it was everybody was new to their jobs. Okay, so my parents completely suck as handlers. And because my persona is blue, I get misgendered a lot. And I had these kids coming up to me asking me, "Are you real?" And one of them actually picked up my shirt.
Oh no.
I'm a partial suitor,
Oh, no.
and they picked up my shirt. It's like, what in the world made you think that was okay?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely having a handler that knows how to deal with those situations is really important. Molly.
So, on the subject of handling for yourself, one of our issues we had before Ashley was the one. So when you're in suit, I can't exactly, I know my tail's back there, but if someone's touching the tip of it or whatever, I don't know that if I'm not looking. And we've had situations where people have tried to mess with our suits while we're out and we can't tell. We had someone try to light his tail on fire. He doesn't know, he can't feel it. And they singed the tip of his tail a little bit. He's very mad about it. I got a cigarette burn on my tail. I had to cut out the piece and so on. And if it's not for handlers, it just set you on fire. Handlers thought they were back off. Yeah, that's the only thing. That's why it's not just for the protection. It's because for me, I cannot see below here at all. So I shuffle when I'm out, so I don't knee into a child or something. Because they'll just run right up to you. You know this. Just whoop, and you're like, oh, there's someone there. So it's not just for their safety for you to be aware. It's also for your safety because sometimes you get butt heads and stuff that are just out. Usually little teenagers or whatever, and they think it's funny to mess with you, and sometimes you cannot tell.
And that's something in public you'll get a lot more of than here in a con.
Definitely, yes, definitely. No, luckily it is not very common.
Now, if you're not experienced handling though, is it safe to say that I could probably answer a stupid question myself and say, you can go to YouTube and probably YouTube handling and learn a lot?
Yeah, there actually are panels specifically on handler that you can look up as well.
One particular event, most of the agents were out of town, and Mac and I decided to join a movie in the park for the county. And it was Shrek. So we dressed in fursuit, partially medieval, and we went out to the kids with no handlers. You had basically two zones. You had the family zone that was prepping to actually see the movie, the parents were there, the kids were there, the food trucks were there, and then you had the Outland. It was Lord of the Flies out there, where there's nothing but kids. I made the mistake of wandering out there by myself. I consider myself pretty experienced. I usually have a pretty good feel for the distance from tip to tail and know where things are and how to convey myself during children. But they mobbed me to the point that I was guarding one eye, I had a tail under my arm, and I was trying to casually shuffle back to the civilized land where the parents were. So handlers are important, no matter what your experience is. With the agents, we often jokingly refer to that we have 3 grades of suitor with our thing. We have the one there, Kittens and I are fairly experienced. So they need a handler in range of almost what the distance is between I, go ahead and raise your hand, I and him. You have our fairly experienced suitors who need a suitor at this distance. And then we have our newly suited that needs a handler this close. And in general, we keep that orbit going on between the different suitors and handlers so that if there is a crisis, if suddenly they need water, or if they suddenly have an emergency, they can actually get extracted out of it. But that moves into safety.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead, and cover the handler section entirely since we are talking about it. The handler is so much more than just someone that's kind of following you around. Your handler is your eyes and your ears. So obviously in a suit, and all suits have different variations of vision, but your vision is still going to be impaired. So that handler is looking out for pitfalls, steps, children that you can't see, and they can see farther from a distance. Hey, that kid looks really frightened. You might want to avoid that kid. So they're really important. They keep you safe. A good handler is going to be able to step in when kids are being too rough, you're being tackled, or any situations like that. They also will help you keep track of time. which is really important. It's really hard to keep track of time when you're in a suit. Obviously, you can't look at the time, and at least for me, I tend to lose track of time very quickly. And that handler can keep track of that time and be like, all right, you need to go in for a break. They're also your voice. Again, if you're a silent suitor, it's really helpful to have a handler that can answer questions for people, explain what they're doing, and they also can take photos for people. There's a lot of times when there'll be families that want photos together, so they can take the photos for them. If your handler is experienced enough, they can also help film and photograph as well. But their first and foremost job is to make sure to keep an eye on you. Does anyone have any more questions about handlers? Yes?
How would you recommend going about finding a handler?
That's
my biggest issue, because for me, fursuiting, the fur meets, those are an hour and a half trip away from me. And most of the people that I know who have knowledge and experience with fursuiters are way out of range to do events that I can get to. But I'm not involved in my family.
Yeah.
They know I'm a furry, they know I fursuit, but it's the kind of thing where as long as you're not hurting anybody, we don't care. We just don't care.
Exactly.
So they don't want to get involved any more than they dislike it. They don't mind it, but they don't want to be involved either.
You want to answer that?
Sure. One thing that was helpful for me was just talking to my friends who aren't necessarily furs and explain what you're trying to do. Like, I'm not going out there to just be in a cringe compilation. I'm going out there to try to make a difference. And a lot of my friends that weren't furs ended up supporting that and supporting me. Like my friend Ethan, who I've known since I was 4 years old, he'll handle for me at events and stuff. Lamp back there, he's not a fur. He's handled with us for years and years and years.
Oh my god,
So really, it's just a matter of trusting your friends. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fur. It can be someone who even just has cosplay experience or no costuming experience at all. Can just be aware of your surroundings for you because you have limited vision and limited senses.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, basically, you really do want someone that you trust. I'm fortunate. My husband, who is not a furry, actually has become my handler. Yes, we're working on him. Yes.
I have a question. You may have addressed this when you were a few minutes late. As far as a handler is concerned, you had mentioned that a furry, when they went to an event, they had to have expressed consent to participate. That must be verbal and written. Is that right? And if it is written, they need to have that on them, on the person that day. And how about the handler as well?
That's a good question. Most of the events I've done have been, fairly relaxed about it. We'll correspond through email. I've had one event where I ended up signing a contract for, and that was at the AKC Dog Show. Do you guys have?
I mean, we usually talk with the organization or the lead organizer of the event we're going to over email. And then once we get to the event, we try to not only have it like on an email on your phone or something ready, but also find the person that you talk to specifically and be like, hey, this is me, I talked to you over this, here's our email, I have explicit consent that I can be here, this is, what do you need me to do, this is my suit, all that sort of good
So
stuff.
as far as legalities are concerned, there's not like an official
No,
handler
there's
license or whatever?
no, but we do federal background checks with our Agents of Mirth.
Okay, that's where I was getting to.
Yeah, it's the background checks that we do is not necessarily any requirement to appear in public. For us, the reality of it as a cosplay organization serving other charities, and we've here with the Shriners, we've here with the early intervention centers. We work very closely with special needs children in general, schools. So it's vital that we have that reassurance to the public that this isn't Uncle Bad Touch in a fursuit. This is actually someone with good intentions and good history. As far as finding the handlers, your friends, we actually have other cosplayers that are not covered up in the face. We have a couple Star Wars ones, superheroes that we actually accompany, and they act as our handlers when we're in
Yeah,
public.
that's a good point too.
We had a Snow White that was playing it off as, these are my animal friends. And they're here to talk to you. Well, they can't talk. I can talk, though.
Yes.
You said you do background checks, and so what is some of the stuff you look for that you would deny a person as a handler?
We go through the actual federal background check that we have here in Florida. Well, not here, this is Georgia, but back in Florida. So any sort of misdemeanors, felonies, that sort of thing. If it's something very, very like speeding tickets, yeah, like speeding tickets, we're not going to be like, you can't join because you went too fast. But,
Sex charges, drug charges,
yeah, but
like that.
capital crimes, things that generally would not make good media, and as anyone who is a parent in here would automatically go, that person's holding my child? The report itself, actually many of the agents don't realize this, when they do the background check, I get an email. In most cases, it simply says, nothing to report from the state, nothing to report from the feds. Now, on the other cases, we actually have in our Constitution, we formally organized ourselves more formally. We do not bias ourselves in any way of gender, orientation, military status, things along those lines. But we are unwatchful in our Constitution for those capital charges, for the crime charges, children charges, battery charges. But that's generally, you think about anyone that's a public access dealing with kids, that's the charges we're looking for.
yeah, and all of our background checked agents get our ID cards here to show, it'll have their picture and their name on it when they joined, and our whole spiel about this person is fully background checked, you can trust them, and all of our handlers and all of our suitors have them. Most of the people that are in the agents back there have these cards, so people know that we're safe.
But I was thinking it's different. Individual is a lot different than what you're doing. You got to protect, first of all, the public, but also the company and the brand itself, and just furries in general. Because you want to give a good impression, not come across with a bad experience.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not from America, so I actually don't know. Do you have anything like what we have back home in Australia? We have a system. It's actually a government system known as the Blue Card, which is actually you apply for it, and it's a government card that you actually, it's a license to work with children. Anybody who works with children, teachers, sports coaches, anything like that, actually are required by law to have them.
I can only answer that for Florida. As the state's a bit more complex by having 50 different sets of rules.
Fair enough.
All the states are subject to federal law, and every state itself manages itself on its own terms. The VEX background check that we use is the background check that is required for teachers, for people going on the school grounds, for people that work with the elderly, special needs. It's one reason why it's so well regarded. Many of the places that we've approached, we go, we're here to help, how can we help? And they go, well, we require all our volunteers to do a background check. No problem. Ours already have.
Yeah, we'll
and
see
they
that.
look at ours and they look at theirs and go, yours is better than ours. Welcome on board.
And as the secretary, I keep all of our documentation of who's gone through a background check and whether or not they've been approved or declined to join our group.
Okay, yeah, because like back home, because a blue card is well known, it's a pretty, it's a very public sort of thing. So if you have a blue card on you, most parents will be very happy to let you interact with kids.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. Like it's proof that you are allowed to work with children.
Yeah, usually we'll hand our IDs off to our handlers and they'll let them know, and a lot of parents get more comfortable once we show them that.
Fair enough.
So we've got actually just about 15 minutes left to go, so I'm just going to kind of go through this a little bit faster here, and we'll save some questions towards the end. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the safety section. So we talked about handlers, so you're all on board, always have a handler. It's also really, really important when you're suiting in public. A lot of times, for the most part, you're going to be suiting outside. It's very important to be aware of, keeping yourself cool and hydrated. Take frequent breaks. Just, know your limits. When I'm shooting outside, I can usually not go for more than 30 to 40 minutes before taking a break. Some people can go a little bit longer, some can go a little bit less, but you'll kind of, learn that as you do more. It's always better to err on, the less, especially when you're first starting.
Yeah, definitely when you're first starting out, don't push for like an hour.
No.
Because even after a year and a half of experience, I can't go a full hour outdoors in suit. I can usually maximum go 45 minutes, and then I've got to pop my head off and get some air. Like this morning, I was around for 2 hours in suit here because there's a lot of air circulation and it's cold air. When you're outdoors, it's almost direct sunlight and there's not as much airflow through your suit.
And we're also all from Florida, so.
Yeah, so like 80 to 90 degrees.
Yeah.
One of the other things though that you should keep in mind is do not be misguided by the fact of, oh, it's an indoor event.
True.
I'll be fine. When, if you want to stand up for just a quick second, when you're wearing this much insulation, the worst possible thing is standing still. There's no airflow. The hot air is staying here. When you're indoors, there's no cross breeze. You're subject to the AC, and that's about it. So outdoors actually does give you evacuation of that heat. Go ahead and sit down, thank you. But when you're indoors, don't underestimate it.
Yeah.
We had an event where we thought, oh, thank God this is indoors. Every one of us was dying. Even our most experienced was coming up to the changing area going, where's the water?
And that's definitely something handlers need to keep an eye on too.
Yes.
If a suitor starts to be a little more sluggish or they've been in suit for a really long amount of time, check on them. Ask them, hey, are you okay? I think you need to take a break. Do you need some water? That sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's super duper important. I'm just telling you, don't marathon suit when you're out in public. Don't go for hours. It's just not safe. Take care of yourself. And stay hydrated. It's obvious one again, but it's super important. Water is the best thing that you can drink. So I'll sometimes bring, something with electrolytes in it, but really water's going to be your best choice here. Nothing with caffeine in it that's going to dehydrate you. Obviously no alcohol. Just water.
Yeah, and I
would not. People think drinking sodas will hydrate you, and it doesn't.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend drinking through your suit either, though, because that runs the risk of getting mold or mildew into the inside of your suit from it getting wet, or possibly damaging your suit in another way on the exterior.
Also, it can lead to a false sense of, oh, I can continue on longer.
Yeah.
That way. Before the event, make sure that you've eaten properly. Try and avoid anything that's real greasy, heavy.
Nothing worse than getting fully in suit and then suddenly you realize you need to be out of suit.
Not good, but make sure that you do, eat something before suiting. You definitely don't want to, get low on those electrolytes or things like that. I do have an experience. It was one of my first public events. I was suiting at a dog event, and I was drinking a lot of water, and I was trying to take a lot of breaks. But it was a long event, much longer than I was used to, and I hadn't quite learned my limits yet, and I was just having so much fun. So near the end of it, I was starting to feel a little bit sluggish, and I was starting to get a headache, which was my first warning sign right now. If you start getting a headache, you need to consider taking a break, because that is one of the first signs of heat exhaustion. Well, I wasn't very smart, and I ignored that headache. I was like, I'm just going to go out for one more time, just a really short little set. And I went out, and it was just the most fun, and everybody was dancing, and I got stopped for all these photos, so we ended up being out for a little bit longer than we should have been. By the time I got back in, my head was pounding. I felt nauseous, and as soon as I took my suit head off, I was sick. and not the good kind. It was not good. I was sick all the way home, and when I got home, I basically fell asleep for 12 hours. So heat exhaustion is not fun. Don't do it. Don't make my mistake. There, that is not good. Some things you can do to kind of help. You might want to consider getting a cooling vest. I have one called an Easy Cool Down, which is, it's a little bit on the pricier side, but if you're going to be doing a lot of outdoor events, it's definitely something to consider. They also make wool collars that are more economical.
I was gonna see that, but that's
Oh,
not where
awesome! Yeah. So
Look like that?
they have a cooling vest right
It's
there.
a big bulletproof vest, basically, but you've got gel packs in it. You slip it in, put it in the freezer, and for maybe 2 hours or so. I should pull one out. So they look like that. You've got pockets. You slip them in. You're good to go for quite a while. I'd recommend having 2 sets though, because
Yes.
these do. I've only been wearing this for a couple hours, and it's mostly melted.
Yeah, because your body heat doesn't really circulate as much as when you're not wearing a suit, because
Yeah.
the fur traps all of your body heat inside.
Yeah, I will say my cooling vest is one of the best things that I've bought for outdoor seating.
I think it's Easy Cool.
Easy Cool Down is one that I have. I know there's a
Yeah.
couple other.
Cool, that's
Yeah.
this one.
There is the benefit of being cooler, but there is also the limitation that you are now carrying a little more weight.
Yes.
And when they're rock solid frozen, your mobility is a little.
It's true, and then once they
off.
melt, it's just carrying extra weight and extra heat. Yes.
There's some liquid cooling vests where instead of having all those packs, it's just the pipes that go throughout the whole vest.
Yeah.
And it's just controlled by a pump. Just to pump all the cold water through it.
Oh, cool. Have you had experience using those?
I never used one, but in 2014, I was allowed to feel it and see how it is, and they work really good.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, those do work very, very well, but they're a lot more expensive, and they're a little more delicate than just ice would be.
Yeah.
Because you have to watch out for all the tubing, and you have to do a lot more maintenance with those to make sure the pump still stays functioning, as well as having a battery pack in there, which is even more weight.
Oh,
Yeah.
True.
They usually go from what I've seen, $500 to $1,000.
Yeah.
And that's the whole set.
Yeah. Yeah, the cooling vest that I got, I can't remember how much it was.
Easy cool down's like 200.
Yeah, it was around a couple hundred.
It's not like it doesn't pump the water around, it's just the ice pack.
Yeah.
That's worth it.
But I do love mine. Easy Cool Down also makes a cooling collar, which is like, I want to say it was like $30.
Yeah, it's 30 bucks.
Which I actually bring that to conventions because I don't really necessarily need a whole cooling vest. But in the green suit. Yes, those are awesome. So what she has is they have is a little box fan, little necklace fan. I actually have one of those.
Where do you get them?
I got mine on Amazon.
I think they're actually selling them. Yeah, they sell them.
Oh, awesome.
Almost every FurCon sells
That's true. I think I've started to see them around more.
Amazon,
They work
eBay.
pretty well.
I actually just have a fan installed in my muzzle.
Yeah, that was another one that I was.
I cannot
They're
switch that
actually,
one because my glasses will fog up otherwise.
The
Without
fans?
a fan, I will get sick and staring around. My fan died and I was sick 30 minutes later. I luckily was able to cool down fast enough that I was able to recover for the next day of the con. With my fan in, I can go 6 to 8 hours.
Those fans, there's actually someone down in the artist alley right now selling very, very small, high-powered fans with a very small battery pack that will fit right in the muzzle or on the top.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I'm right
of
here
your
and I
suit.
sell them. Like we custom make them and they have a low setting and a high setting, and they run off of like a USB power bank that just holds in with a magnet, so you don't even have to sew it in.
Okay,
And they're like,
can I just
they're
ask
like $40. Yeah,
side question? With that, well, a corollary. The fan that came in, Mrs. Ryder, that Hunt-Free is for Persona right now, is,
I can't hear.
It's just loud, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming these are quiet. I can't even hear yours running.
Like the ones we built have a high setting and a low setting, so you can hear.
So they're just a lot quieter.
But it has a high setting for like when you're in a rave, so it doesn't matter how loud it is, but it has a
Yeah.
low setting so that, because we found out that first years couldn't hear when they were on high.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because like mine doesn't have different settings, and I can't hear anything unless it's right at my muzzle. and like it's just really aggravating.
Yeah, we tested these first to make sure, and that was like one of the first things we found.
So there was actually one point that was asked that I think was fantastic. We didn't get to answer yet, which is how do you, like if somebody wants to hug you and you don't want to give consent.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't like being touched very much. So a lot of the time, you can just sort of back away from a kid and just wave. You can like get down and do high fives instead of the hugs. And if you don't want to do a hug, you can just kind of put your arms up like that, which helps me a lot because if a kid gets there, or I had a couple teenagers come up to me and try to hug me, and I wasn't feeling it, so I put my arms like this and I sort of pushed out like that and then away.
That's really good. Yeah, it's just a more, like gentle, like.
Yeah, not like shove,
yeah.
but like you can kind of push them out like that without hurting them or making them trip or anything, very easily just with that. Another thing we use, and Disney uses too, if you are in a situation where you're just getting mobbed by a lot of people and you don't think you can handle it, you cover your left eye with your left hand and raise your right hand up in the air like that.
Yep.
And that basically means get me out of the situation right now.
You get a chance for your handler to go, oh no, have you got something in your eye?
Yeah.
We need to get you over here.
Yeah, which I didn't cover, but having an emergency signal, and that is my emergency signal as well, is really important. Something that you discuss ahead of time with your handler. Something that can't be misconstrued as anything else. And it basically tells your handler, we have to get out of this situation right now. Hopefully you won't have to use it, but it is something really important to have.
Another thing is, when you're doing that, stand stock still.
Yes.
Because if you're moving around, they might think you're still playing.
Right.
So when you do this, it's freeze.
Yeah, exactly, just like that.
Completely frozen. Because that's absence of movement is another big indicator.
Yeah. So we don't have much time left, but I would like to cover some performance tips because that is important in public. One of the things in public is always let people approach you first. Unlike for conventions where everybody's running up and you never know exactly how someone's going to react. So in most cases, I let them come to me. It's especially important with kids. And just understand that not everyone is going to be receptive or want to interact with you. And that doesn't necessarily mean they hate you. They might have a fear of mascots. They might just not be feeling like interacting with you or a little uncomfortable with it. So just kind of let those people go. There's so many other people that you can make happy and when you're performing around kids, we'll just cover that real quick. Most important things is to get down to their level. Sometimes mascots and fursuiters can be really intimidating for them. So just getting down to their level can help ease that situation a lot. Again, let them come to you. High fives, fist bumps, things like that they can do. Most kids are, pretty universal. When you hold your hand out like that, they know you want a high five.
Yeah, and for the kids that are scared, Laylee and I both have long floppy ears. So what we'll do is we'll take our ears and cover our eyes and do peekaboo with them to sort of warm the kid up to us.
Which they love. And if you don't have long ears, obviously,
Yeah, you can use your hands too.
I often hide my eyes and stretch out for a high five or fist bump.
Yep.
And I'm looking and
Yeah, covering the eyes is a really big help when you have frightened children. Just taking that tension off of them. If you have a kid who's really scared, I have, just act frightened and, in response, show them that you're more scared of them than they are of you. Hide behind your handler, cover your eyes, duck down. A lot of times that will make the kid feel like, oh, well, they're not so scary if they're scared of me. In the back.
Yeah. Another thing when you're out performing with children, keep in mind when you're doing your photo, your child placement. Always keep them on the outside of the leg.
Yes.
Because if you put them in between your legs, it can look really bad. Another thing to do is make sure your paws are seen
Always
in the photo.
visible. Yeah, make sure in photos your
That
hands
way,
are always visible.
When the parents get home, they're looking at that photo, there's no questions asked, it's a good photo.
Yep.
Another thing with keeping kids on the outside of your leg, a lot of kids throw their arms back and stuff. So to avoid personal injury, you want to keep them on the outside of your leg, so it's very easy for you to get out of a situation where you could get hurt.
you'll find that it's actually, if you watch other professional paid suitors, that's what they do. And it prevents a lot of questions about why is my child in this man's crotch. If he's on the outside of the knee, you've got control of the kid, control of the situation. You're not going to get your bells rung, and they're going to see where your hands are at the pictures at home at the end of it.
So yeah, that's really important. You know, always make sure your hands are visible. Also important, never ever hold a child or baby. There'll be many occasion that a parent will come up and try and shove their kid in your arms. Yep, that is my immediate response. Hold my hands up. This is also a good time for the handler to step in. You can even kind of make it a little bit comical. Like my husband will step in and say, "Oh no, sorry, she's got butterfingers. She can't hold your kid."
We can't have her drop another one. Why don't you hold them and get in the picture too?
Yeah, exactly. That's the time for the handler to say, you know, I'll take the photo if you want to hold your kid and get in the picture as well. I have had one experience. It was actually a dog that someone placed in my arms before we could intervene at all, and in that case I just kind of dropped down, you know, carefully so that, you know, if something were to happen. It's amazing how many people will just shove their children or animals into a stranger's arms that obviously don't have very good dexterity. So that's something that you probably will encounter. Just keep in mind, don't hold the baby. Don't do it. And do you guys have anything to touch on in terms of performance?
You want to go first? Sure. Go ahead. Okay. I think the biggest thing for me is personality. You want to be you when you're in suit. You want to have a personality for your character and something for your kid, for not your kids, but for kids to identify with, to see and be like, oh, that's funny. So like, when I'm in suit, I act super, super cutesy and super, super happy. And Lelia and I have very similar personalities when we're in suit, where we jump around and we dance. Kittens over there does backflips, handstands, all sorts of acrobatic stuff. Yeah, he's crazy. So having this sort of diversity of characters lets kids sort of identify with different characters more. So, and as well as adults. So it makes a lot of events feel a lot more personal for kids.
In the same breath where Kittens is the august clown who always lands on his feet, and so is Lily and Bo Goat. Pesto is the tramp clown. I'm the one who falls. So one way or another with the kids, they tend to identify with someone in the troupe. The biggest thing to think about, though, is when you're in suit, when you're in public, you have an amazing sense of power. You can change someone's day, you can change someone's world through simple actions. Make a difference.
Amen. I think we're about at time. I don't know if they're going to kick us out or if anyone has any last minute questions.
Can I just say thank you?
Oh.
This, as a parent of a very new furry who wants to perform.
I've been a furry since 2nd grade, actually. But I'm in 7th now. I got my fursuit not too long ago.
Her dad's spontaneous trip to the outdoor mall with zero planning went well, but
I'm
this is
so
exactly
glad.
when I saw this.
I'm so glad.
Excellent panel.
We're more than happy to help.
And if you guys have any questions after the panel, you're welcome to reach out to me. You know, I'm always happy to answer any questions. Online, I go by Lelia Spaniel on Twitter, Telegram, Instagram. I do have a Telegram chat specifically for public fursuiting. If any of you are interested in joining that, just get with me. And the Agents of Mirth are very well versed in all of this, so I'm sure they'll be
If you do have any other questions, agents, would you please stand up? You see them around the column? If you've got questions, feel free to ask any of them or any of us.
Yeah, any questions at all, any of us would be super, super happy to help you guys with. This is something that not only I, but everyone else is extremely passionate about.
And I do hope that you guys are encouraged to get out there and do more public suiting. It is so amazing, not only for the people around you, but for me in particular, I feel like it's been kind of a life-changing thing to go out there and just make a difference in the world. So thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.